Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jace of the Forestry Project. In today's video, we've been updating the property tour, and I want to start going in and updating the maps. So we're going to be doing a lot of mapping stuff today, a lot of on-the-ground stuff, and then next week we'll actually go in the office and get it all on the computer and make sure it all looks good. But there's a few things I want to do. So if you remember back to our first mapping video where I broke the stands apart, there was several spots with bigger stands that really I don't want to have to manage all the exact same. So we're going to be breaking that apart a little bit. We're also going to be getting, there's a fence area that I want to dot out on the map, and that way as we start building roads, we're able to know where we need to cross that fence at. So I want to get that done. And then I also want to go around and map a little area that I'm going to try to turn it into a greenfield this fall. So let's look at some of the mapping. I'm not going to go in as much depth as the first video where I showed you how to do everything. This is more so going to be just how to think about when you update your stand maps, because this is something that should not be, a once and a done thing. It's going to be something that you want to keep, building upon and improving as you go, especially as you go out and you update your property tours, you learn more about what's out there, you're doing stuff out there. Now it's time to go through and actually start updating the maps to reflect that and to build upon the specific property that you want. So let's get into it. I'm going to look at some mapping, draw out a few points, and we'll see what it starts to show. Alright, so now we've made it over to where I want the greenfield to be, or at least we're going to try the greenfield this year. We'll see, year to year it may change. It's kind of a greenfield, kind of a way just to get started with management. So, as typical, I'm going to kick up the map over here. And one of the things I want us to look at is where we're at. We're kind of in between some of the ravines and the upland pond stand that we wanted in more of, like the long leaf. And as part of that, I want to start breaking up that big pond stand into smaller areas that we can start to manage. So if we think about it, around the pond, we want it to be open and inviting, so when you're at the pond, it's not some closed off forest. I'm more concerned about aesthetics right there, but I also know that the open ponds and the grassland ecosystem is going to be beneficial for wildlife, so it will be helpful. But down here, I want it to be a little bit more closed off, but we don't want the whole thing closed off, and that's where this greenfield comes into play. So for this, I'm just going to walk around the perimeter like I've done on some of the other stands. So I've got the Onyx maps pulled up, and one of the things we're going to be using today is going to be the tracker function. So I'm going to walk around the perimeter of what I want the greenfield to be. We'll track it, and then once we get in the office, we'll be able to put it out on the computer and actually see what it's going to look like. So let's start the tracker and get going and see what it's going to be. So we're over here, so I'll start off on one side, walk back around, and then we'll look at it. Alright, so we've mapped it out, and we will stop it and call this, let's do greenfield for the time being, since it's only one. And save. So now we can see it's not huge, but it's going to be something to get started with, and that's really the main thing I want to do, is just get something that we can get some grasses growing, and then be able to expand it out to a broader scale if need be. Now, one of the things we talked about in the podcast with Drew Metzler was look at your neighbor's property. So when we look at that, we know there's quite a bit of pasture land around us. So just grasses isn't necessarily a limiting factor. Now, if we can get some native vegetation or some really good greenfield mixes, I lean more toward native vegetation, but we can do stuff that way. So it'll just be a way to get started. We'll go in, implement a burn to get rid of some of the leaf duff layer, and then figure out what we're going to do as far as planting, letting native stuff come back in. But this is a great time to do it in the summer when it's worm out and you don't really want to be doing other stuff. It's easy to go out and walk around, map, and see what you're wanting to do on your property for the upcoming fall and the spring when it's cooler and it's easier to get out and work. That doesn't mean you don't do stuff over the summer, just kind of be smart about what you want to do. It kind of goes back into this, management plan and understanding when you want to do something. Make it as easy on yourself as possible, because we all know there's enough to land management that can get difficult that we don't want to add anything else. So now that we've got that little perimeter done, I want to start mapping. We used to have a road that went from this area back out to the pond, and I want to start mapping that out again so that we can clear it out and start using it. So we're going to go in and kind of map that road back out a little bit and then start looking for that fence line so that we know where the road can cut through, and that way we can get it back on the computer and see what we're working with. So let's map the road and see kind of what we're going to be looking at. Okay, so now we're at the edge of the greenfield, and that's kind of the little area behind me. There's a little bit of the road that we had left, so we're going to try to map that out the best we can using whatever we still have left. Because, again, trying to make stuff easier, if you already have a road semi-established, it'll be a lot easier to just finish it than completely restart like we will on some of the other roads. So we're going to go through, I'm going to do a similar function. We're going to be using the map tracking feature, and we'll track the road back out to the pond, and that way we kind of have this area a little bit mapped out and we know where to follow to see what we need to do. So we're going to go back to the tracker. We're going to start. So now that we've started, let's go ahead. We're going to walk it back out and see what we're looking at. So as you walk, you'll want to pay attention to, as I've discussed in earlier videos, watch what you're walking over, because you don't want to be, stepping on stuff like a snake or something. But also, when you're walking, look for, how we tracked it out. Try to map it best you can to where the road kind of matches stands, and that way we can use the road as stand boundaries. And we can go in a little bit on the computer, but it's always easier to just kind of do that the best you can in the field. So as we're walking along, you're trying to look for the best spot for the road, but then also the best spot for you and your property and everything else. So it's kind of a balancing act, if you will, over what you can do. But we're going to finish walking out the road and see what it looks like. So as we're walking around through here, you can kind of see a little bit of where the trail was already established, and that's what we're going to be looking for as we go. So some of it will be different, but a lot of it's going to be just this right here. Okay, so now we can see we've made it almost back to the pond, and you can see that little blue line going across is where we're at, and then the red dot. is where we actually are. So we can see the road. Now, you know, some of it ain't exact, but a lot of it fairly close. One of the things I failed to mention, and I think I mentioned it on the last one, was, though, that as we're doing this, pay attention and think about what it is that you're making the road for. So if you're making it for a walking path, it doesn't have to be as wide, but if you're making it for a truck or a side-by-side, or it needs to be a lot wider. So when you're making that, try to limit, unless you're cutting the trees anyways. And if you're cutting the trees anyways, that's a completely different story. But if you're not, try to limit the amount of work you have to do by going out and cutting trees down when there may be an area 10 feet over where the trees are close enough, or not close enough, far enough apart that you can get through and actually, you know, drive without having to cut stuff down. So it's all a balancing act, but we're going to finish this out to the pond stand real quick, and that way we can go find the fence and see what everything looks like. So let's go. We're going to go out, finish this, see how it ends up looking. From the phone at least, it looks really good. So we'll see what it looks like once we get back to the computer, but I think we're doing pretty good. So we've made it up to the pond. Going to stop. We'll name this just road. It doesn't need to be super specific. So we'll name it road. Save. Okay. So now we have the greenfield and we have the road. Let's go over and find the fence. Alright, so we made the road, we walked over it, we actually found the fence line. So you can see that one post right there. And then on this side we have the barbed wire and the fencing. But if we go over to here, I can walk through it and you don't have the fence going through. So this is going to be where we'll map out that the road will cut through, and this road is going to be from one side of the property to the other. Since we have two ways in, this will kind of connect them inside the property. So let's look on the phone again and get us a point drawn here. That way we can always remember where it's at. So if we look at the phone, we can see this time, instead of using the tracker, we're going to use the tools. So if you go to tools, you're going to do this add waypoint here. And this waypoint we're going to name fence break. That way we know it's a break in the fence. And we're actually going to put it on the access top, and that way we can kind of keep it a little bit separate. And I'm going to go ahead and stick with the aqua, since that has been what the other colors were that I need to go back in and edit. That way I know to go back in and edit this. So I'm going to hit save, and we can see that it didn't work right. So we're going to edit, going to delete that, and then we're going to do add waypoint again, but I'm seeing what it's doing wrong. So I'm going to discard that. Now I'm going to do the point, go in, add waypoint. Now we're to where I need to be. So it was key to hit that point. So now we got the waypoint. We're going to go back, we're going to hit access, we're going to name it fence break, and that is all we need to do. Change it to aqua, hit save. So now we have the fence break in there, and we can start getting this road mapped out a little bit better. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support, and until next time, happy management and God bless.